we got some video clips from a popular sitcom that somebody sent to us, and they thought that had some good content for a podcast. And so we're going to take a look at some excerpts from Young Sheldon, and that was the spinoff of the earlier sitcom, The Big Bang Theory. With a name like that, maybe you watched the show, Bill. I've seen a few episodes. What about you?
No, I've never watched it. My tastes are more for programs like the old Law and Order from the 1990s. I loved the legal maneuvering and machinations of the Law and Order episodes. So that's more to my tastes.
Sometimes TV and movies provide some teachable moments, we found, with our kids and even with the church. The podcast that we did on an episode of The West Wing several years ago is still very popular. And obviously, entertainment media can also influence the worldview of millions of people. So let's check out this first clip. The main character, child prodigy, the genius, Sheldon Cooper, Big Bang Theory, that character when he was a boy, so this is a prequel. Sheldon Cooper is attending church with his mother.
Sometimes people say to me, Pastor Jeff, how do you know there's a God? And I say it's simple math. God either exists or he doesn't. So let's be cynical. Worst case scenario, there's a 50-50 chance. And I like those odds.
That's wrong.
Shelley, put your hand down. Sorry, please continue.
I wonder where the writers came up with this 50-50, Bill.
Yeah, this is really strange, Kevin. Just because there are two alternatives, the odds of each one are equal, that's obviously incorrect. I either exist or I do not. Does that mean the odds of my existence are 50-50?
The pastor invites Sheldon up to the front of the church in this next clip.
So, you were saying?
You've confused possibilities with probabilities. According to your analogy, when I go home, I might find $1 million on my bed, or I might not. In what universe is that 50-50?
So what do you think the odds are that God exists?
I think there's zero. I believe in science.
So you don't think science and religion can go hand in hand?
Science is facts. Religion is faith. I prefer facts.
I understand that. Here's a cool fact for you. A lot of famous scientists believed in God. Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, even Charles Darwin.
So Darwin's right about God and wrong about evolution?
Now you're getting it. Let's give it up for Sheldon, everybody. What a good sport. Oh.
But I wasn't a good sport. At that moment, I vowed to come back the following Sunday and destroy Pastor Jeff.
Well, in that short clip, we have probability theory, science versus religion, the definition of faith. For starters, Bill.
The boy's statement that the odds of God's existence are zero is just as foolish as the pastor's statement that they are 50-50. On his own definition, if science is fact and religion is faith, then they cannot come into conflict. It would only be in the case that religion also made factual claims that a conflict would be possible and thereby reduce the probability of God's existence. As I watch this clip, Kevin, I'm actually more disturbed by the portrayal of the boy as wanting to destroy his pastor. This imputes to Sheldon a vengeful, evil character. He's not the innocent boy that he appears to be. They're portraying him as a really mean and nasty person, and I find that disturbing.
When the pastor listed the great scientists who are Christians, and we can do that when we talk about Kepler and Lister, and we go through the list of science who began the scientific method, Bill, it's not an appeal to authority. It's just saying that if you think that only ignorant people are followers of Christ, you're wrong. That's the appeal we're trying to make, right?
Yeah, I wondered about that myself. I think that the pastor's point actually did respond to Sheldon saying that the probability of God is zero because he believes in science, because science is factual. And what the pastor was giving was counterexamples of great scientists who also had a religious faith. So, in fact, it's not true then that science and religion are necessarily in conflict, as Sheldon seemed to think.
In this next clip, young Sheldon's father is in the hospital, and Sheldon finds himself in the chapel praying, but not to God.
Despite what it looks like, I didn't pray to God that night. I prayed to Blaise Pascal. My thinking was, if he was right about the existence of God, then he could pass along my request for my dad to get better. If he was wrong, well, in this moment, I needed him to be right.
It looks like the writers have done their homework there, Bill. They have Sheldon being knowledgeable about Pascal's wager, which we may need to define again for someone unfamiliar with it. So,
well, it seemed to me that this wasn't really a consistent presentation of Pascal's wager. He says, if Pascal is right, then God exists, and he can pass along his request to God. What he needed to add then was that if Pascal is wrong, then God does not exist, and so it wouldn't do any good to pray anyway. But he is choosing to pray simply because he said he needs Pascal to be right.
yeah. And again, I'm interested in some behind the scenes here. The writers do something kind of Pascalian with the pastor, and then young Sheldon identifies it. So they're kind of dancing around Pascal's wager here, don't you think?
Well, I'm wondering too about the writers. I mean, that's the really interesting thing about these clips, Kevin. It's not the arguments. These arguments are on a very low level. But what's interesting is, what does this tell us about American culture, Hollywood's attitude toward religious belief, and so forth? And it does seem like they're trying to balance things a little bit. They make both the pastor and the boy look foolish at times. On the other hand, they give both of them some good points. So it does seem that they're trying to be somewhat balanced in their presentation.
In this next clip, Sheldon is back at church and once again confronting the pastor during Sunday morning worship services.
I thought I'd talk this morning about how it all began. Now, everybody knows on the first day of creation, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And when God saw that light, he knew it was good.
Oh, here we go.
Yes, Sheldon.
You said he didn't create the sun until day 4.
Yeah,
So how could there be light the first 3 days?
God is light.
So God's a photon.
God's what made photons possible.
And what day did he do that?
I would think day 1.
How could you
I'll grab my chest and keel over. Maybe we can get out of here.
That's a terrible
There was
thing
no
to
count
say.
the days because the first day had just begun.
So before the Big Bang,
There was no Big Bang. There was only the Word.
was the word kaboom?
Okay, do it. We gotta go.
Well, part of the comedy of this show is how obnoxious that Sheldon is, and his parents can't control him, apparently. The writers have him showing up the pastor on the days of Genesis in front of the congregation. It's kind of cringy.
Yeah, so what I'm asking myself is, what does this tell us about these script writers and Hollywood culture? I think the takeaway here is that it shows how negatively influential young earth creationism continues to be in our culture. It's still an object of mockery, ridicule that people take to be authentic Christianity. And as you know, I think that's simply the wrong interpretation of Genesis chapter 1.
in this next clip, and they kind of continue this theme, even though I haven't seen all the seasons and all the episodes in the seasons, Bill, but they continue this theme a little bit. And Sheldon's mother is having a crisis of faith. Sheldon tries to help.
Faith means believing in something you can't know for sure is real. And right now, I am struggling with that.
So you don't believe in God anymore?
That isn't something for you to worry about. I need to figure this out myself.
Can I help? Maybe I could provide a fresh perspective. Did you know that if gravity were slightly more powerful, the universe would collapse into a ball?
I did not.
Also, if gravity were slightly less powerful, the universe would fly apart and there'd be no stars or planets.
Where are you going with this, Sheldon?
It's just that gravity is precisely as strong as it needs to be. And if the ratio of the electromagnetic force to the strong force wasn't 1%, life wouldn't exist. What are the odds that would happen all by itself?
Why are you trying to convince me to believe in God? You don't believe in God.
I don't, but the precision of the universe at least makes it logical to conclude there's a creator.
Again, the writers are doing their homework. They've got some fine-tuning in there. Faith and fine-tuning come up in that, Bill.
Yeah. Now, here the mother is portrayed as saying that faith means believing in something you can't know is real. And that's not a biblical conception of faith. Faith is trusting in something that you have good reason to believe is true. So if you have good reason to believe that something is true, the question of faith still remains. Will you trust in it? So having good reasons to believe something is true doesn't remove the requirement of faith, but faith is not believing in something that you can't know is real. Now, I find it really odd that they have Sheldon saying that he doesn't believe in God, but that it is logical on the basis of the fine-tuning evidence to believe in a creator. How do you put that together? Does he think that there's a creator of the universe, but that this creator is not God? Or is he simply being inconsistent? I don't know.
Yeah. You know, Bill, as an aside, I had an opportunity to interview Jerry Mathers, who played the Beaver in the Leave It to Beaver series. And he told me that one of the things that made Leave It to Beaver so funny and some of the older sitcoms so funny was that the kids talked like kids. And he said, in today's world, they make them like little adults with vocabulary beyond their years, and they're wiser beyond their years, and they're usually mentoring and comforting the parents rather than the other way around. And I remember his words, and I had to say that that's kind of what happened here.
Yes.
But Sheldon's a genius, you know, he is, but here's this child trying to help his mother, you know, during this time and saying, hey, Mom, it's at least possible. But we have one more clip. Sheldon continues trying to comfort his mother.
Baby, I appreciate what you're trying to do. But logic is here. And my problem is here.
Well, there are 5 billion people on this planet, and you're the perfect mom for me. What are the odds of that?
And then they embrace. And, you know, that's a real sweet scene, Bill. The head and heart dichotomy comes up, also probability and some things like that.
Yeah, again, the difference between knowing it in your mind and really trusting in something with your heart, those are two different things. And that gap between head and heart can be difficult to bridge.
Well, as we wrap up today's podcast, Bill, I want to get your final thoughts. And I do want to mention how the pastor is portrayed in this show. He's a little smarmy or fakey. I think they were trying to pattern him after Joel Osteen. Not that Joel Osteen is smarmy or fakey or anything like that, but it just reminded me of him. They're probably patterning him after him. But he's depicted at least attempting apologetics a couple of times.
Yes, that's true. I think that these clips that we've looked at today are not significant for the arguments that they present. As I say, they're extremely elementary on both sides, but rather this kind of a sitcom provides a sort of thermometer for us that helps us to measure the temperature of our culture. And it's good to see, at least, that these kinds of issues are still on the front burner.